2030. It's
2030?
Was it 2030?
Oh, all right.
Thank you. We can do that.
Okay.
We've already talked for 15, does that count?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, y'all missed the first 15
We
minutes. of it.
just started recording, so. Alright, so that's Mr. Waller. These are my classmates, Jessica, James, Angel, and you already know me.
Yeah.
We had another one, but I'm not sure she's able to make it.
That's okay, that's okay. She can watch I guess she can watch the recording then, so.
Yep,
So who called this meeting? Mako?
I did. So we have to interview somebody that has forensics experience.
Mhm.
And since I had your class and I know you have plenty of experience,
Yeah.
I decided to interview you.
Sure. Okay.
And we basically have to each actually ask questions about the career and
Okay.
why you went in it and
Okay.
what kind of experiences you've had.
Okay. Sure.
Well, you want to start off by introducing yourself,
Yeah.
what you started with?
Yeah.
And
I'm Jason Waller, and I am the currently department chair for what's called Legal and Public Service Careers here at Tyler Junior College. That covers our criminal justice degree, our paralegal, legal assistant degree, and our public administration program. Prior to that, and I'm in my 18th year full-time here at the college. Prior to that, I was in law enforcement full-time for over 20 years. Still carry a badge, still a police officer. Kind of shocked my students the other day, last Monday, because I came in, I was wearing my badge and gun. And we had to qualify to keep our license twice a year, so I'd go shoot that morning before I came to class. Prior to that, I spent the last 14 years of my full-time career in law enforcement working in the sheriff's office. I was in the detective division. I worked basically as a homicide robbery detective and crime scene investigator for those 14 years. Last 5 of those 14, I was the lieutenant over violent crimes, which covered homicide, robbery, sexual assault, kidnapping, basically all the crimes of violence. Supervised the crime scene unit and our records division. And then, of course, before that, I was a street officer for about 6-7 years between the sheriff's office and then the police department. I have my associate's degree from TJC in criminal justice, my bachelor's and my master's in criminal justice from UT Tyler. So I'm where y'all are at. Probably not the same classrooms, but it could be. Y'all still in the business building, I'm assuming. So a lot different because I went back in the early 80s before all of y'all were born to get my bachelor's degree, and then I came back to school and got a master's degree. I was telling Jessica.
Yes, sir.
I was telling Jessica that I was actually the first graduate from UT Tyler's in 2004 when they started a pure master's degree in criminal justice. So it had an interdisciplinary study program. You took 12 hours here, 12 hours there, and 18 hours somewhere else, and a lot of criminal justice and public administration and other stuff. But I was the first one to do that, and I was the first one to write a thesis. So here I am.
Can you tell us what you liked the best about your job or career in general over the years?
When I worked law enforcement, I knew when I was a kid that I wanted to be a cop. I had an Uncle Jake, and Maker's probably heard this before. I knew I had an Uncle Jake who was in law enforcement, and I worshipped my Uncle Jake. This huge, big broad-shouldered guy, and just jet black hair, looked kind of like Dean Martin, and I just said that's what I want to do. And I grew up in the era of shows like Dragnet and Adam 12, and then as I got older, it was like Quincy, which is one of the things I thought, I want to be a pathologist. That's kind of what I wanted as a freshman in high school, a gazillion years ago. That show was popular, and I thought I want to be a pathologist because you could work with dead bodies. Now, not that that's a morbid thing. It's just I thought that was kind of a cool career, And watching Dragnet, I knew that I wanted to be a homicide detective, and that was pretty much it. And I thought, well, being a forensic pathologist was great. Then I found out, that you had the 4-year degree and 3 years of med school and 3 years specialization. And I'm thinking, okay, my parents can barely afford for me to go to junior college. How am I going to afford all that? And I'll be 30-something years old before I ever have a job, not knowing, that you'll get a job after med school. And so I thought, well, the next best thing is to stick with a career of homicide. So I started my career here. I actually started college as an engineering major because your parents sometimes have a way of saying you don't really want to do that. It's dangerous and all that. And so my mom taught me out of it, but I couldn't. I sat around the corner in the drafting classroom, take an engineering drawing, and the final exam was to draw a nut and a bolt to scale. And I'm thinking, this is not going to cut it for the next 25, 30 years. So, made my mom unhappy. I changed majors. I started in criminal justice, and I never looked back. Again, focusing that, I knew this is what I wanted to do. And so I started classes. I actually worked as a campus cadet, as a security officer. My first commissioned officer as a gun-toting, badge-wearing police officer was here at the college when I was splitting time here and at UT. I was a junior at UT, and I was an RA at the football dorm here. So did that, and then I went to work at Tyler PD and then the sheriff's office. And so it was one of the things that I aspired to do is to public service, help people. And I thought the ultimate job to have was to solve that unsolvable puzzle that, and I like puzzles. I mean, I bought, 1,000-piece puzzles at Christmas and stuff. Did a lot of that when growing up, and I thought, solving that unsolvable puzzle of finding out who on a particular day decided to take someone's life, who played God this particular day and took this person's life, and work for them and their family to see that victim gets justice. And so that was really kind of what I wanted to do, and that's what I enjoyed about the job was the fact that I was able to accomplish that. I was able to serve my fellow man in whatever role I was in. Now, there was a lot of fun times and a lot of horrible things you see, especially working homicides and crime scenes. A lot of nasty things you see too. A lot of mundane things you do and see, but it was the satisfaction. What I liked the most was that I was always helping somebody.
So, if somebody else was to enter the criminal justice field, what would your advice be for them?
First of all, look at your past, because your past is going to really tell whether or not you're going to be able to do that in the future. Law enforcement's not for everybody, whether it's being a police officer on the street, working as a detective, working in forensics. It's not. A lot of people, crime scene example. A lot of people, I want to be a crime scene investigator. Well, they see because they saw these shows on TV, and they don't see. It's not scratch and sniff TV. They don't see. They don't show the bodies in an autopsy room flayed open, and not on network television usually. And you don't smell the smells of these decomposing bodies, and you don't, just some of the things that you see that you may not be prepared for. It's not, like I say, it's not how TV picks it, and so you've got to be prepared that what you see on TV is not reality, whether it's being a street officer, a detective, or a crime scene person. But set yourself some goals. To answer your question, to set yourself some goals. I was fortunate to have in my undergraduate, I had a professor who was the head of the department at UT at the time, Dr. Vernon Rich, and his wife actually taught here at TJC. When you're college, sometimes you'll do a lot of different things for money, honest things for money.
Yes.
And so I kind of you kind of like to eat and stuff. And so I kind of warmed up to both of them, and so I actually babysat for them a couple of times. It was pizza money, and so they just kind of took me under. Dr. Rich really kind of took me under his wing, and so we're sitting there one time before or after I think so they go out to the movie or go someplace, and they said, so what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your career when you graduate? What do you want to do? We asked it. I asked that all the time, students. I said, I don't know. This is, I kind of want to do this. I kind of want to do this, but I kind of want to be a homicide detective. They said, okay. So where do you want to be in 5 years? Okay, 10, 15, 25 years. So, of course, Miss Rich made it into an assignment, and so I had to write a paper. We were talking about papers early before y'all got here, and so I wrote a paper for some extra credit. Again, in college, you do anything for extra credit too. And so I set some goals. And my goals were and I was 20 at the time. By the age of 25, I wanted to have my degree, and I wanted to be working as a police officer at a decent sized police department. Now, a decent sized police department wouldn't be, and I'm not sure where you guys are from, but it would not. No offense to the little small towns. I grew up in Gladewater. 20 officers maybe. I wanted to be working for a department that had 100, a couple hundred officers, at least that big. That was at age 25. At age 30, I wanted to be a detective. I figured that's 5 years as an officer, kind of get a well-rounded experience on the street. And I knew that I would start out working whatever, whether it's, misdemeanor trash dumping cases to misdemeanor assault, whatever it was. It got my foot in the door. By 35, I thought, okay, I'm going to be an officer for 10, a detective for 5, that maybe I could do what I could to get myself maybe into violent crimes. And then my last goal was by the age of 45, or I'd be basically 25 years, or 25 years down the line, I wanted to be a supervisor of some sort, a sergeant or lieutenant. Well, and talking with Dr. Rich and Mrs. Rich, they said, well, you can't wait on everybody to do things for you. You've got to take some initiative. And so, my junior year at UT, I was about to turn 21. Oh, I was already 21, I guess, at the time. And I was working at the college here, living in the dorm, working and being in charge of the football team's dorm. I decided to apply to different departments. And so I applied to several departments here in East Texas, a couple here in East Texas, Long Beach and Tyler. Applied in New Orleans, and I found if they don't pay anything, they still don't pay anything. And I'm a big diehard Chicago Cub fan, and so I thought, well, Chicago would be a great place to go to work. Well, you had to live in Chicago back in those days. Well, I get the call from Tyler, beginning of 84. I was actually about 3 weeks into, not even 3 weeks, right at the beginning of February, 2 or 3 weeks into my second semester of my junior year. Hey, you start the academy in March. So I had to take incompletes in all my classes, and so at 22, I actually, right at 21, I finished the academy at age 22. At 21, I started the police academy. I was a top police officer. That was 4 years before my goal. I left the police department and went over to the sheriff's office at the age of 25. And at the age of 26, I went into the detective division. At the same time I went into the detective division, I was originally going to work burglary and theft. Well, that was the summer I was just turned 26. That was that summer of '88, and so I take 2 weeks of vacation because I'm getting married for my first marriage, and so I'm getting married, and so I already had those weeks planned. So when I go get married, honeymoon, and all that, I come back to work. I'm getting my key to my office. I go set my office up and everything, and I come in the first day of work, and I'm ready to go to work. I'm going to work burglaries and thefts. I'm ahead of my goal because I'm 26. I'm a detective. 4 years before, 4 years before that I set that goal. And I walk down the hallway, and I see a buddy of mine who 2 weeks prior was on patrol with me on midnights. And I said, hey, what are you doing? And he said, they put me in CID 2 weeks ago. I said, really? What case workload are you working? He said, burglary and theft. I said, whose? He said, Casey Rogers. I thought, that was my caseload.
Uh-oh.
And so the secretary, Pam Williams, said, it reminds me, the sergeant wants to see you in his office. I'm thinking, I'm going back to patrol. I took 2 weeks off, get married and honeymoon and stuff, and now I'm going back to patrol already. So I go in there and I said, hey, he said, I guess you see that Hilton's here. And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, we brought him up to work burglaries and thefts. And I said, well, I thought that's what I was working. He said, yeah, well, we talked it over, talked over with the supervisors, and we thought that because of your education, your background, and your initiative that you'd shown as a patrol officer, that in my experience as a police officer at the top PD, which I'll go back to in a second, is that you would be perfect for Don Cox's caseload. I said, okay, Don Cox. He's that bald-headed guy, right? Bald. He's basically hair right here, but he's bald here. And I said, wait a minute, Don Cox worked hey, he works homicide and robberies. They said, yeah, we want you to take over that caseload. So at 26, not only did I become a detective, I went straight into working homicide and robberies. Okay, so 4 years before my goal of being a detective at 30, and 9 years ahead of my goal of being a homicide detective. Luck plays a lot in it. Well, I'll go back to the Tyler PD, and what helped me out was I broke my collarbone when I was a patrol officer. Shattered it. I broke it when I was 4, falling off a set of monkey bars at some place. And at 24, right over here by TJC, we were in a foot chase with a drug suspect, and it was a wet night like this. I'm coming down this grassy hill thing, and I hit the pavement, and basically I fly across the road, and I drive my shoulder, and you see the scar here. You actually see the screws right here. So my collarbone went snap into pieces. So I was off. I had surgery about a week afterwards. 6 weeks off in light duty, where I was like this for like a month, and then I was off for almost 3 months light duty till it healed. And so instead of sitting in dispatch, which is what injured officers did on midnights and do this all night long, I think this may be your compadre.
Yes.
Hey. Instead of sitting there for 6 weeks or actually 3 months, I went to my lieutenant and I said, Lou, I'm going to be bored in dispatch. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm going to sit there and waste. I mean, I'm going to get in the way. I'm just, I said, we don't have a crime scene guy on midnight shift. If we have a crime scene after 11 o'clock, from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., we have to call somebody out. Well, that means overtime. I said, I can't go on the street for another 3 months, 2 to 3 months. I said, but I can work light duty. And so while I'm off, why don't you get me assigned to work with a crime scene unit at the PD and get cross-trained on how they handle things and what they did. And I said I had a little experience because when I was in college, I took some criminalistics classes here, and then at UT they actually had a criminalistics class. Glenn Johnson, who was the lab supervisor at DPS Lab, taught it at UT. It was hands-on fingerprinting and some stuff like that. In fact, I taught the fingerprinting course. I taught the fingerprinting stuff at my police academy because the instructor said, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going, I can help. So I went back and I cross-trained for about 2 months in the crime scene at the PD. And when I went back to patrol on midnights, they didn't have to call people out for a lot of things, for burglaries and thefts, robberies. I helped when they came out and worked a dead body, and so I got all that training. So that jumped ahead back when I was sheriff's office. That's one of the skills that I had. So to answer your question is have yourself some goals and do everything you can do to meet those goals. When I was a patrolman at the police department, and in the 7 months I was on patrol at the sheriff's office, I took vacation time, and because I was single and lots of money. But I had money that I was going to spend on this or that, and so I would go send myself to schools on vacation, and I sent myself to schools like death investigation schools and crime scene type of schools, and so I knew because I had that goal, and I thought build myself a set of skills to set me up to when that opportunity knocks on the door, I'm there to answer it.
Wait, you said you went to you sent yourself to schools and stuff?
Yeah, I took my time off when I was on patrol officer and would get permission to go and pay out of my own pocket to go to some training seminars.
So could we do it right now, or do we have to be
It would depend on the training, who's putting on the training. You could.
Okay.
And there's a lot of civilian training out there. There's a group here it's based out of East Texas. Rudy Flores is a former Ranger. They're based out of Palestine, and Nick Webb. In fact, Nick's coming in the spring to show our student group a new infrared camera, and Jeff Ratcliffe, who used to be the crime scene sergeant here at Tyler PD. They teach. I'm a little disappointed they haven't called me, but they know I'm busy anyway. But they may allow civilians to come. It just kind of depends. I was able to because I was in law enforcement, and so what agency you're with, Tyler Police Department, Smith County Sheriff's Office, and so that was at my end there. And then when I did go into CID, we didn't have a crime scene. Well, we had a guy that worked at the Mississippi Crime Lab back in the 70s and 80s. And he was the crime scene person. And quite honestly, we had a murder case that sadly he kind of screwed the scene up. And I kind of took over. Again, kind of, you know, if you send me to some schools, you know, I've already got this training, this training, this training. And that was where I was real fortunate. The 14 years I was in CID, I went to some top-notch schools. I'm a fingerprint expert. In fact, I do a lot of work now for defense attorneys now because it's, I mean, I don't advertise. If I get an email or a phone call,
Right.
you know, I say, what's your case and when is it? Like summertime is great because I've got nothing much to do, so I can work on them. Very, very few as far as a defense expert, but I have done a couple of murder cases over the years as a defense expert. In fact, I've done 5 murder cases as a defense expert, and sadly, all 5 of them were found not guilty. Not to say that they were guilty, but a couple of them I know they should never have been indicted on the case. But because of my training, I'm a certified fingerprint expert. I learned how to operate the automated fingerprint identification system, AFIS. I'm a blood spatter expert, blood spatter expert. I've testified in court on crime scene reconstruction, bullet trajectory, and an expert in domestic violence and search and seizure law, all from schools. But got to train under, in fact, this picture right over here on my wall, it's me over there on the right, of course, much younger me. The guy on the left is Dr. Henry Lee. If you ever watch any Discovery Channel or anything like that, crime shows, Dr. Henry Lee is considered, he's out of Connecticut, but he's considered one of the world's most renowned crime scene people. And the guy in the middle was basically my table mate. And so this is at Advanced Homicide. It's an invitation-only course. Back in the day, it was only invitation only. Dave Rivers, who's a friend of mine, he's the father of the Cold Case Squad concept, Metro-Dade, Florida. And I met him at actually our State Homicide Association. We had him come in years ago, or back a couple of decades ago actually, come in and talk to us. And so met him there and got an invitation to go to his school in Miami in '97. Anyway, so I go there and there's like 30 officers from all over the country and two different countries. But one guy from the Bahamas and one guy from one of the Caribbean islands. I can't remember. It's not Bahamas and something else. U.S. Virgin Islands. But that was my table mate, and I'm thinking, okay, first of all, this guy's, now I'm old now, but this guy's got he's got this scraggly looking beard, he's bald, and I'm going, hi, I'm Jason Waller, I'm with the Smith County Sheriff's Office in Tyler, Texas. And he says, I'm Tom Harris. I said, okay, hi, how are you, Tom? What agency with? I said, I'm not. Civilian. I said, Tom Harris. That name's ringing a bell. He said, well, you may know me as Thomas Harris. Y'all know who Thomas Harris is? You ever seen Silence of the Lambs?
Yes.
Hannibal?
Yeah.
Black Sunday? He wrote those books.
Oh my.
Yeah.
That was quite an honor then.
Yeah, I drink a lot of scotch with him. It was cool. It was cool to sit there, and we had a couple of dinners together, and talked homicide cases, and he picked my brain. He said that's what he does. He go to these schools and he'll go out for drinks or a dinner or two and learn some things from case presentations and some of the guys there, and so I've read all the books. I read all his books, after that, and I'm trying to figure, okay, is there anything in he picked from my brain or one of my cases? Yeah, I can't find anything. So, but
So you found that working with talking with other professionals also increased your knowledge?
Absolutely.
Just the general knowledge?
Absolutely. We had a pathologist here. We did, and I think they still do now, a lot of them. We said, hospitals here will allow us to do autopsies. We did most of them at Mother Frances, a few at Medical Center, but there's pathology associates here at Tyler. And Vivi Gonzalez, who's got to be 100 years old, but probably still works and teaches, I learned from him the first couple of years, and then they brought a young guy in named Steve Balesta. Steve Balesta was from, he's from Missouri originally, St. Louis area. He did his fellowship at the City of New York ME's office. And the guy that he replaced is the chief medical examiner in Dallas. And so he went there, did his fellowship there, and they hired him here in Tyler. And he was board certified as an anatomical, clinical, and forensic pathologist, which is very few of those in the country. And he educated me on anatomy and everything. I mean, you learn from these people you work with. Glenn Johnson, and if you work, of course, when I had students come in, I want to be a crime scene investigator. I want to work in forensics. I ask them two questions: do you want to work crime scenes, or do you want to work in crime labs? Because there's a big difference. Crime lab, you're going to have a degree probably in some type of either chemistry or biology or microbiology, except for ballistics, firearms, and that basically you have to have a degree in something. It helps if you have a degree in chemistry or have a little background in it, but it's really knowledge of firearms, and then they teach you the skills you need to become an expert. Our crime scene basically is you're working as a law enforcement officer or maybe a civilian, depending on the size of the department, and you're working hands-on stuff. And so, we have students that most fires want to work in crime scenes. A few want to work in crime labs. So we get them to kind of minor in our field and then major in chemistry or biology. But yeah, networking and working with folks, reading cases, reference materials. I've got some of my books, but I used to have a whole big, huge library. A lot of them are basically boxed up in the attic now, but just I collected. I mean, I would go to used bookstores, half price books in Austin, and then there's one in Dallas off of Park Lane, that are right there. That's kind of the central one. And every time I go there, that's where I go, and I see if I can buy some cheap reference material. And then I don't typically read a lot of fiction. If I read it, so I read true crime. But that's what you learn. You pick up those things, and that's where you kind of and get lucky to have some good people who will mentor you. And that was important for me. I had two guys that mentored me when I was cross training at the PD, and then when I went to kind of started the crime scene unit at the sheriff's office, we would still have to call the PD come help us. But Randy Melton, who was our campus police chief here, he was my sergeant at the PD, and he was in crime scene unit, and he kind of mentored me. And Ken King, who went to Arkansas State Police years ago, he mentored me, and so you get those folks there. Bob Henderson, who trained me in blood spatter, he responded to post. We did our final crime lab exercise Wednesday, and he was posting stuff on my Facebook post on that. So you get to learn these, meet these people, and you train under them, and you can get them to mentor you, and show some initiative. Show some initiative. Get out there and say, hey, can I go to this school? And you might be able to. I'll get the information on their I'll get their website, and they may let you go. I mean, they may. They're in the business of making money and training people, but hey, a feather in your cap when you graduate and say, listen, I've been to these schools here. Especially if you're trying to get into the civilian side of crime scene stuff, because a lot of your bigger departments are kind of moving that way. I tried to do that back 20-something years ago at the sheriff's office. Jeff Ratcliffe tried to do it at the PD. Most of the agencies here in East Texas, you're going to be a police officer first, then show some initiative to go in the crime scene. But you go up in the Metroplex, big cities, out of state, and I tell my students, and I hope y'all's professors tell y'all, get out of. I mean, are y'all from all here around East Texas?
I'm from Austin.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm from here.
Here?
California originally.
Waxahachie.
Waxahachie, yeah, I was there a couple weeks ago for a football game. Yeah, get the heck out of East Texas. If you're from East Texas, get the heck out of here. If you're from Austin, did you know in 1992? No. In 1992, I was trying to think because I was in Laredo at our homicide conference. We have a state organization called Homicide Investigators of Texas, HIT, and I first started going to those conferences in '90, and then I actually in '93 I became a board member, and then I was president 2001 to 2003. I was Secretary Treasurer for like 7 years, and I said, "Oh, our Constitution says you can't do that anymore." and when I became president, but in 1992, I sat next to a guy from Austin PD. They didn't even have a crime scene unit. In 1992,
Okay.
they had a photography unit.
No crimes.
They had a fingerprint unit, but they didn't have a unified crime scene unit at the time. Dallas County Sheriff's Office didn't back in '89. I went to fingerprint school there, and they had a photography unit, a fingerprint unit. But now they have a combined. Big departments may take that. I mean, big departments may have that luxury. I was telling my class, my forensics class, my criminalistics class. There's 6 in the team, and it took them almost 5 hours to process a very simple crime scene. Very simple. Their finals. They had to take some time, but it took them 2 hours to photo the crime scene. And so we're going to brief Monday. They're going to turn in their findings and everything. But they said, well, how long would it have taken you to photograph that crime scene? 20 minutes. It took his job 2 hours. They said, but yeah, you've been doing it for a long time. I said, yeah, I know. I mean, boom, 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 boom. It's second nature. They're still learning. But I said, but think about it. It took y'all 5 hours to work a team of 6. And you had one person was job helping, you had partners. One was primary, one was secondary, at every duty that they had to do. I said, what if you had to do that with just 2 people or 1 person? And as I did for 9 years as a detective, I was not only the crime scene investigator, I was the lead homicide investigator and the lead robbery detective. So, I did everything. Detective, crime scene guy, detective, crime scene guy, detective, crime scene guy is for my hat. And the thing was that I only had 1 person to blame if the case didn't get solved. That was
You messed it up, it's you.
And if the crime scene wasn't done right, I only had 1 person to blame, and that was who I was looking in the mirror. But when I left the sheriff's office, we had 3 full-time people working the crime scene unit by the end, and could have used a 4th one. And we went from basically a 1 camera and a couple of things from fingerprint powder that we borrowed from the PD to a full crime scene, crime scene truck and everything. So, but yeah, it's just depends on what your role is. I mean, if you want to work, and like I said, get out of East Texas and get out of Texas, because those were just a lot of the jobs are at. So.
Anybody else have a question? I don't think you got to ask one yet.
Well, I want to just focus on the fun facts. I know you came out in like a show, right? Or
Which
like,
one?
Well, a few of them, right?
Oh yeah. I think I'm
can
gonna
you-
get one next summer too.
Can you go ahead and name a couple of them?
I've been fortunate to have some of my cases profiled on several crime shows. Sadly, apparently crime's big business on television, and true crime is big business on television, and which we reap the benefits of it, in college. But hey, I want to do this, and that's why I went to college, just because of Dragnet and Adam 12. Y'all probably see those if y'all watch like the CW or some of those old TV shows.
I remember them kind of when I was a kid. So.
Or Netflix, or Hill Street Blues.
Hill Street Blues was wonderful.
Hill Street Blues is
I
the
love that
best
show.
cop show ever.
Yes, it was.
And I've got the first 3 seasons on DVD. I can't afford the whole set, but now I got that rich daughter of mine.
Yeah,
that's
she
the
can buy
nurse
it for you. Put it on your
That's-
Christmas
She's
list.
asking, what can I get you for Christmas? That's why I'm gonna get
That
you. Well, my oldest daughter is a nurse in Arkansas.
Yeah, because
And-
I took your class last 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about how one of your daughters was in nursing school and they were taking
Yep, she graduated on Saturday, started her job, making more money than me on Monday.
Oh,
A
that's
parent's dream. A parent's dream. And she just sent me pictures. She's about to close she built a house this fall. She had it built. And so she closes next Friday. It's finished, but it's a month ahead of time schedule. Because they had good weather up there in Arkansas. But she closes on it on next week, and then she graduated. And she went into working in a psychiatric ward in a juvenile wing because she wanted to be a neonatal nurse, and those jobs don't come open very often. Well, this summer that job came open, so after a year working in a psychiatric ward, being the charge nurse, they hired her for neonatal. But she does her days off over at the psychiatric ward every once in a while. And because her best friend is in charge. And,
Wait, so she's been graduated? Or did
yeah, she's been a year and a half now.
Oh,
And
that's
so she starts in January, not only working as a neonatal nurse, but she's working as a PRN, whatever that is, part-time RN, I guess, back at the psychiatric on her days off, but she's a clinical instructor for the University of Arkansas. So I'm thinking, you're definitely gonna make more money. So she can afford the box set now, History Blues. But yeah, I guess some cases, I guess, probably one of the first cases that kind of hit it big was in 1993, the state of Texas, we had a hate crime law. And in 1993, because our legislature meets every other odd year, so every other year, they passed a hate crime bill like in 91. In 93, they added sexual preference to the hate crime law. And what the hate crime law does is that it increases the potential punishment for crimes that were done with the motivation of hate. It originally started with race and religion and ethnicity, and then in 93 they added sexual preference. That went into effect September 1st. The end of November, beginning of September, we started seeing some what were known as gay bashing crimes, and it led to the end of November of '93 with a murder of a guy named Nicholas West. And so that got a lot of nationwide publicity as far as print media, television. Larry King Live, was on the case. I did a thing with 2020, ABC News thing called 2020. That led to Lone Star Hate, which is a documentary. And by the way, if you really get bored and want to waste about an hour and 45 minutes of your time, go to YouTube and put in Lone Star Hate, and you'll see a much younger, darker-haired, bigger me. And it profiles the third defendant in that case. Two guys went to death row, Henry Dunn and Donald Aldridge, and then David McMillan got 2 life sentences. But it profiles that. And then another guy came and did a documentary, and I can't remember his name. Paul Yule's the producer from. I spent 2 weeks with the BBC and tried to get them to fly me to London for the premiere, but they wouldn't go for it. But I spent 2 weeks with Paul Yule and his group. But there's a guy, he's a very famous documentary maker, and he's homosexual, but he made this documentary. It won the Sundance Film Festival Best Documentary back in like 96, 97, something like that. That led to, I was on Women Behind Bars on the WE channel. Let's see. Hey, I'll be with you in a second. Okay?
That's all right. I was just checking, make sure you got that book thing squared away.
I did. Thanks. Okay. Let's see. The 2 movies, Primetime Live, Cold Case Files.
I love the Cold Case.
On A&E. We were actually the first hour-long episode. It chronicled a kidnapping murder of a little boy named Chad Choice from Tyler. It was the first 30 minutes. The second 30 minutes was the aftermath, because the guy that was behind his kidnapping and murder was a guy by the name of Patrick Horn. Patrick Horn was a co-defendant in a murder case that I had, and it all revolved around drugs and bank robberies. And so they came down here to talk about the Chad Choice murder case, which I was on the task force, and helped dig up the remains, and process 2 cars. With the PD's guys, and but that led to Patrick Horn and Gene Lindsay and Chris Wells, who killed a guy named J.C. Lavasser. So that was that case, and then
You also had some bones meld to the.
yeah, that's the guy that had
Yeah.
the bones meld. Yeah, and then I was tell you one of my filing. I was telling you one of my filing things the other day, and this stems from Nicholas West case. I was in Vanity Fair. I was on the Brad Pitt cover of Vanity Fair, and
It's young there.
yeah, he was much young there. But anyway, he chronicled a bunch of gay killings here, and that's a picture taken. This guy's a Pulitzer-winning photographer here for Texas Monthly, and anyway, he took this picture and a whole bunch of others. But I was cleaning out trying to reduce my filing cabinet because I'm running out of room. I can't throw that away. Well, a couple of years ago, I get a call from Discovery ID group and say, hey, listen, we're coming up with this. Coming up with this show that is going to be hardcover called Hardcover Mysteries, and it's books that have inspired crime writers. Badachi, I can't remember his name. I really didn't read much of his stuff. The guy that wrote The Onion Field, was it Ellie
Wambach?
Pop?
Wambach.
Yeah, Wambach.
Joseph Wambach.
Joseph Wambach. And then a gal by the name of Sandra Brown. Now, Sandra Brown was when I was a kid, literally when I was a kid in the 70s, she was the weather girl for KLTV here in Tyler. And her husband was like a newscaster. You know, she got out of the business and started writing romance novels. And then about a decade ago, she starts writing these crime fiction. Well, she was approached and she said, well, there's this case in Tyler, which was the Nicholas West case. So Nicholas West case, there have been 2 documentary movies and like 2 different shows made a profile on that case. And so they came down and they did this hardcover mystery show. Well, that was about 5 years ago. Then 2 years ago, I get a call from a producer in San Francisco say, hey, listen, we're doing this new show called Vanity Fair Confidential. And we're going back through all these Vanity Fair magazines and find all these true crime stories that they profiled over the years and came across this Nicholas West case, and we're fascinated with it. I'm going, again? And so I said, sure. So they came down and they filmed that case, and it turned out real well. And I think, for Netflix, I think you can find their documentaries, find that Hardcover Mysteries for sure, maybe Vanity Fair. And then 3 weeks ago, I was in, 4 weeks ago. Last game, I'm a high school football official, so I'm trying to think, that was the last game of the season, so it was the second Friday in November. I went up to Dallas to film with, again, the ID channel, Discovery Channel. They're doing a new show, they're profiling. The tentative title is called Tyler, Texas Justice. Now, it kind of scares me to think, okay, are they going to make fun of us? Is these people from New York and stuff, or are they serious about, the kind of justice that you get when you commit a crime in Smith County? They seem like they're legit, and the guy's been really nice. David and his producer Rachel have been really great. We're great to work with. In fact, if you look in my office there, you'll see that box of cases that came down. They're going to come back if the show's a hit. They're going to come back and profile a bunch of my cases. But they profiled a case that I did the crime scene on because we had grown so much. We'd grown from 6 detectives to like 18 detectives, and from one person doing crime scene and as a detective to 3 guys working crime scene. But I did the crime scene on this case in February '99. It didn't go to trial for 13 years. I was here at the sheriff's office thinking the case had been disposed of. Or I was here at the college, and I get a phone call and say, we got a subpoena for you. This is 13 years later. I'm going, who's that?
Hope I kept some notes.
It's been a while. And so, actually, that became an issue because they came up and I said, well, I've got it, I'm sure, in storage somewhere in a box, but if y'all when you come by, when you bring this in, will you bring me a copy of the case file?
Refresher, yeah.
And they bring me this deal, I'm going through there, I'm going, where's my stuff? Well, that's all we've got. I'm going, just hold on.
Box.
I went and got in the storage box. I mean, I had boxes of it, and pull it out. It's actually sitting in the office now. It was my case file was this thick, and so I made copies of them. They're going like, oh my gosh, I think we can win the case. I'm going,
Why did we take 13 years?
I said, where's the case? Where's my stuff in the case file? Well, it wasn't in the case file for whatever reason. Because they came to me, they said, well, we know you and Cecil. Cecil was my partner, or actually Cecil, well, we were partners, but he worked for me in crime scene. And they said, well, we know Cecil was there and, his report's there and everything, but we figured, we thought, well, you probably wrote a report. I was telling the prosecutor, they said, Leslie, if I drive by a crime scene, I'm going to write a report. I mean, come on. I said, but I wrote, you have specialties. I hate fingerprinting. I run more suits and ties and,
stuff all over
blow black snot and fluorescent snot out of my nose for weeks. students experienced that this fall. But Cecil loved fingerprinting, and so we kind of made a deal. I'll do the photography, you do the fingerprinting, I write the reports. And so I said, let me go get that. So they're profiling that case and some others. They're going to do another one here in this series that happened after I left the sheriff's office. The girl that was killed in Chapel Hill. She was a TJC student actually, and was killed. And it was kind of a whodunit until they finally got the 13-year-old brother to confess.
I remember the case.
You remember the case?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
It's kind of
long ago was
sad.
that?
I don't remember the name, but I remember the case.
I got an email because they was asking me about what I knew about it. I'm going, I saw what I know is what you probably saw on TV or read in the newspaper. 2007-ish, 2008, something like that. It wasn't all that long ago. But yeah, they said that the director said that if that series is picked up for a second season, they're going to come back. Right now they're hitting kind of newer cases the last several years. So we'll come back and look some old ones. And I said, I got plenty of them, 150 of them that I work. So.
My favorite show is the Cold Case show. I love that show.
Okay, the Cold Case Files.
Yes, I love that show.
It's that's a difficult thing because you think about it. I'll probably pull it out, the case file of the big classroom. Did I ever pull that big filing box out?
Yeah, you did.
There's a case case that happened in Christmas night of '79. I'm a senior in high school. Y'all parents probably don't anymore. But I was a senior in high school in Gladewater, and a murder happened in Troop, just outside of Troop. And it was a guy working at a fireworks stand as a church charity. And he's found the next day when two boys come to buy fireworks. And they had been there the night before. Kind of, okay, we need this much money for this. So they were kind of making a list of how much money they had to come up with. So came back the next morning and they find this guy shot and killed. Investigation worked for about a month. They got some tips. They arrested three guys, a 17-year-old guy, a 19-year-old guy, and 17-year-old's dad. And the 17-year-old and 19-year-old give confessions, implicate the dad in the murder, and he gets tried in 1981 and gets sent to death row. Long story short, there's some controversy over the prosecution of the case and whether or not some things were turned over by the prosecution, who blamed then the sheriff's office for not prosecuting or not turning it over. Some exculpatory evidence was not turned over, reports that gave the defendant a window for an alibi, that he wins an appeal, he gets out pending a retrial, goes out to California, hires Rodney King's lawyer, and files $80 million civil suit against the sheriff's office, the sheriff, and the two original detectives. Next day, I get to reinvestigate the case. It took me about 5 years to put him back in prison.
Well, you got him back in.
Yeah, I got him back in, closed the case, dismissed the civil case. But that's a case that if I write a book, I'll write a book on one or two things. I'll either write a book about that case, or I'll write a book on the escapades of Bonnie and Clyde in East Texas. I've done a bunch of research.
That would be interesting to read that.
Yeah, because the thing is,
look for that book.
I've got the whole FBI Freedom of Information Act files downloaded, and I was going to say it was over there, maybe in there in the closet. But yeah, they actually stole 2 cars here. I spent like 3 weeks at the library going every newspaper from back in the 20s, and they stole 2 cars here one night. One of them Ralph, what's now Front Street, but stole 2 cars, a Chrysler and a Ford V8, Clyde-like V8s, big brand new Ford V8s, were big fast cars. They drove west on what's Highway 31 over, and then went to either Maybank or Eustis, can't remember the town, but the hardware stores back in the day were where you went to buy farm implements, hardware stuff, hinges, whatever, tools, and guns. And so they were going to break into this hardware store and steal these guns and commit some robberies. The town night watchman sees the flashlights in the business. Basically, they get spooked and they run, and then it's pouring down rain like today. They get the car stuck. Bonnie and Clyde and a third guy ran in the woods. Well, Bonnie and the third guy get caught. They get jailed in Kemp in the little bitty, what they call the Hooskow, which is, not much more than a doghouse jail. Clyde basically steals a donkey and escapes, and then and so then Clyde also, when he was younger, actually rented. I didn't know you could rent a car back then, but apparently he rented a car in Dallas, drove to Nacogdoches where he had met this girl someplace, drove down there and kept the car for several days. That's why it's one of his first arrests. Bonnie's brother worked in Gladewater, my hometown, and so and then when I was working this old murder case from '79, I was talking to a bunch of old people down in the ARP area, and they kept on telling me about this robbery back in the day. We just talking, and they said, yeah, I remember when Bonnie and Clyde robbed that paymaster that time. So there was back in the 20s and 30s, there was a big oil boom, of course, in East Texas. And there was a paymaster between ARP and Overton, a refinery thing, or not a refinery, but some type of oil field business there, and they apparently robbed them. And so they have a little. Of course, they traveled up and down Highway 80, which is the old basically what Highway 20 is now, and Highway 31, all over the place. And so they did all kinds of things here. So anyway, maybe I'll write a book then. Retire.
Exciting stories.
Dad, or tell us some of the funny stories of that, like I hate snakes. And we were working a murder case. It was a drug deal, and drug dealers from Dallas came down and shot and killed the guy and the girl in their bed. 22 rounds. We found 22 casings fired in this bedroom, and someone went down, through the flooring and stuff in this mobile home. And so, we collect the bedspread, the sheets, and everything after we got the bodies out. And we're collecting all these casings, and we're digging bullets out. And we obviously had bullets going through the floor, so we're probing them down. The bullet pass is showing that. And then we said, well, somebody's got to crawl underneath that trailer house and get those bullets up. And Cecil said, I guess that means me. I'm going, yeah, 2 reasons. Number 1 is I have a bar on my shoulder because I'm a lieutenant. And 2 is because there's snakes under there and I don't do snakes. And of course he had another comment. I won't say what his comment was on it. I weighed about 320 pounds back then, so.
Oh my.
Something had to do getting me through the little bitty hole. I think that was probably what his comment was about.
I would just say the lieutenant.
Yeah, that's what
lieutenant.
I
don't have to do it.
But that was one thing, and then just some of the, it's just some of the there's a lot of stories. Some of the things we did back in the day, some of the fun stuff you can't do anymore in law enforcement. You get chastised for, suspended, fired for. We thought it was fun.
Yeah, no, but the community policing there right now.
Yeah. So we did some things that were today would get you fired probably in today's world. But nothing illegal.
Yeah.
Nothing illegal. Nothing unethical. But
just frowned upon.
Heavily frowned upon, and probably heavily
politically incorrect.
Heavily frowned upon back then.
Yeah,
but I'll just say this: if you ever get to read or see the movie The Choir Boys, it was nothing near like that. But we had fun. So, other questions?
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was
Oh, you
fun.
bet.
We might have to think about taking some classes over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.